Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. We have this brave epidemic that's getting people to feel a little paranoid and maybe taking action in a direction that just won't make them feel as healthy as they believe. Yes, the swine flu is upon us, and there certainly seems to be a lot of chaos and pandemonium when it comes to what to do, what it is, and how it can be treated. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is Dr. Raymond Francis of Beyond Health. He is also author of the book Never Be Sick Again, has been on our program sometimes before, and he's here to talk with us today about what the swine flu is and how we could probably avoid those vaccines and treat it naturally. And I'd like to welcome to our program our guest, Dr. Raymond Francis. And how are you doing today, Dr. Francis?
Just fine, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be on the show. It's appreciated.
You bet. Always a pleasure to have you on the program, to have somebody with thorough, good, solid information instead of the misinformation we tend to hear out there where nobody wants to have any responsibility for anything, it seems like. Now, let's talk about the swine flu. We had a guest on our program here about a month ago was saying the swine flu actually had been around since the 1970s. Tell us about that.
Well, I don't know if it's been around since the 1970s or not, but basically it's not a problem, and so it's nothing to worry about. The swine flu is not very contagious. It's a very mild disease. The whole thing has just been so overblown and so hyped up. All they're doing is trying to scare people, so they'll go out and get vaccines. So they can sell a lot of vaccines, but the whole thing is just a big PR thing. I mean, I'm a scientist, right. And as a scientist, show me the data. Show me the data, and I got to tell you, they just had the winter down in the southern hemisphere. We're going to start to go into our winter, but they just went through the winter in the southern hemisphere, and guess what? There wasn't any swine flu epidemic there. And we're not going to see a swine flu epidemic because all of the preliminary data that was done on this showed that this was a very mild form of flu, that it was very not contagious, and indeed there are some excellent statistics on this that have been published. The death rate from normal influenza, in fact, in 2005. 0.8% of the people who got regular flu died. 0.8%. The mortality rate for swine flu is 0.5%, less than regular flu. So where's the epidemic? I mean, do you see an epidemic? Does anybody see an epidemic? Are people dying from this?
Right.
And the few people who are dying from it, and again, they've done studies. The few people who are dying are people who have already had or already suffering very substantial problems. So they have health problems. They're already in a very weakened condition. Healthy people, people in any kind of reasonable condition who get this flu are not in a problem. And in addition, the deaths have been tremendously overblown. Mm-hmm. And again, they're skewing the statistics and finding that there was another study that was done, found out that the statistics were so skewed that actually very few people are dying from this. Most people are dying from regular flu and not from the swine flu. So what we're talking about here is a non-problem. That's all been hyped up. The data shows that the swine flu is not a powerful virus at all. And indeed, what they've been doing is reporting regular flu as swine flu. Mm-hmm. And CBS, by the way, did a study on this. That's the TV and broadcasting network, and my hat's off to them because usually a broadcasting network is scared to death to look at anything like this because they're afraid their advertisers are going to pull the drug people are going to pull the advertising.
Sure.
But here's CBS, much to their credit, conducted a 3-month-long investigation into this matter, and what they found out is that there were actually very few cases of the flu that were reported were actually swine flu. In fact, in Georgia, they found that only 2% of the cases reported as swine flu were actually swine flu. Now, in Alaska, only 1% of the cases reported as swine flu were actually swine flu. California, only 2% of the cases were actually swine flu. So you see, this is not an epidemic. It is not a problem. It's being blown all out of proportion in order to sell vaccinations. And of course, the vaccinations themselves are extremely dangerous. You don't want to do something that dangerous. You do immediate damage to your body. You do lifelong damage to your body. It's not the way to go.
And that's the thing, when you bring up network television, for instance, and they tend to bring this story up and create the so-called paranoia that you tend to sense and feel and experience out there, is, okay, if CBS, as you said, has done this report and says, look, this is ridiculous that we're actually reporting the fact that this is, A, an epidemic, and B, something to really be concerned about as far as our mortality goes, but yet the other networks steer the other direction. It's like, what's to be gained there by creating such an unbalance when it comes to news reporting as well as news research?
Well, sensationalism sells.
That's
number one. Sensationalism sells. So the more dire the news, the more people are going to want to listen to the news. But there's another very subtle factor, and that's that today the drug companies run everything. They advertise drugs on television, on radio, in newspapers, and magazines, and all these guys have to do is say, hey. And we all know newspapers are going out of business, magazines are suffering, everybody's suffering. These guys say, hey, you say something that we don't like, we're going to take our advertising away. And so nobody's going to say something they don't like. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, taking a look at the vaccine situation, this to me has me alarmed because I think it was about 2 months ago, I actually read in the local paper that it seemed they were going to require students who go to school to have to take these vaccines. That really bothered me to think, that they're taking the, power out of the parents' hands. Let's just say that, the swine flu, for instance, isn't that big of a deal. Okay, but yet for your child to come into our public school, they need to be vaccinated or else they can't go to school. Now, I found out that there's actually a way around that. But that's what's got me alarmed is that they're forcing school and school children to be vaccinated against something like this.
It is alarming because, first of all, vaccinations don't work. I mean, all of the studies that have been done.
And you're not the first person on our program who said that.
Well, that's again. I don't say things.
Right.
I'm a scientist. I look at the data, and I interpret the data, and then that's what I go with. I don't have opinions. I interpret the data, and that data says vaccinations don't work. They're ineffective. True, they do work in some people for a period of time.
Sure.
So you get some protection in some people for a period of time. That does happen. But it comes at an enormous cost. When you vaccinate someone, you do lifelong damage to their immune system, and we've known this for 100 years. And you do immediate damage to the immune system, very immediate damage. In fact, this is well known in the scientific literature, that if somebody gets a vaccination, that for 2 to 5 weeks after they get that vaccination, their immune system is suppressed. Mm-hmm. And this makes them highly susceptible to catching a virus or a bacterial infection. And so this is why people get these flu shots, and they go out and get very bad cases of flu.
It's like you're just putting that virus right into the body that could have actually prevented it in the first place.
Right, and you're damaging your immunity. Well, the whole thing is you want to keep your immunity strong. If you want to be healthy, you have to keep your immunity strong. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there have been studies done on MMR vaccine that's given to children. And they find that when a child gets MMR vaccine, for about 2 to 5 weeks afterwards, their immune system is suppressed. So very few mothers know this, and then we find that the kids get sick and die. Now, very interesting. It wasn't until 2003 that they started to give small children flu shots. So let's look at the data. Again, I'm a scientist. Let's look at the data. Let's look at 2002, the year before we started giving children flu shots. In 2002, there were 12 deaths, pediatric deaths from the flu. So 12 children died of the flu in 2002. In 2003, they started giving mass vaccinations to children under 5 years of age. And in 2003, the death rate jumped to 90. From 12 to 90.
That's incredible.
Incredible. And in 2008, there were 116 deaths. 116 deaths. And they're vaccinating everybody. So they're vaccinating people, and the death rate is going up. So you see the problem here. And again, mothers don't know this. Nobody's telling people this. If you give a flu vaccine to a small child, their death rate from the flu increases by 700%. So if they get this flu, their death rate is 700% higher. So you don't want to be doing this. You don't want to be damaging children's immunity by giving them dangerous vaccinations. What you want to do is keep their immunity strong in the first place. And that means giving them a good diet. And a good diet excludes sugar. Sugar is one of the most deadly metabolic poisons in the world. When you follow the chemistry of what happens when you eat even 1 teaspoon of sugar, it is so devastating that if people understood it, they wouldn't want to be in the same room with something that dangerous. 1 teaspoon of sugar within 2 hours will decrease your immunity by 50%. And then people say, oh, I caught a cold. Oh, I caught the flu. Oh, little Johnny came home from school and there was something going around. There's a bug going around at school. No, thank you. They fed little Johnny sugar at school, and yes, he became susceptible to infection. Then he came home, and Mommy had been eating sugar, and he passed on the infection to Mommy, and everybody's blaming the germ. No way. It's the immunity that matters, not the germ. So, you know, we got to start thinking differently about infectious diseases.
Yeah, and that's so true too, because it's always predicated. A person taking action is generally based on something they usually heard or thought they heard or read from somewhere else. They never look into the matter deeply enough to make a good, solid decision about what the next step is to take.
Exactly. And getting a vaccination is a bad way to go. In fact, there was a Canadian study done on influenza vaccine, and they found that if you have received an influenza vaccine in prior years, that you're at greater risk for getting swine flu and even greater risk for developing complications if you get the swine flu. There's been excellent studies done on if you get a flu shot 5 years in a row, your chances of developing Alzheimer's disease goes up by 1,000%.
Oh my goodness!
1,000%. So you know, these very dangerous vaccinations are being sold to the public as a public health measure, something that's going to help you, something that's going to keep you free of disease, and it's simply not the truth.
Now let's talk about specifically what the swine flu is, what symptoms there are when you have it, if you should have it. And this is without, let's say, the vaccine itself. We already can tell from what you've shown us, the data, that you go out and get a swine flu vaccination, that's a heck of a lot worse than getting it. But let's take a look at what it is and what the symptoms are, and then we can go into the natural ways of how we can treat the swine flu once, in fact, you do have it.
Well, I don't really look on swine flu as, you know, if you're a virologist, you can certainly differentiate between flu viruses. But basically, it's a flu virus, and it gives you flu symptoms, the same kinds of symptoms you get from any flu. and it's going to differ from person to person. Everybody's going to react differently to the same kind of infection, depending on their nutritional capacity and even their genetic makeup. So, and that's one reason why they're getting away with this scam about taking regular flu and calling it swine flu, and yet when CBS looks at it, they find it's only 1 or 2% is actually swine flu, and the rest of it's regular flu, because you really can't differentiate between the two.
Ah.
So, so you really, and again, the swine flu is less contagious than regular flu. Less contagious.
Yet they have you believe by thinking about it out there, you're going to get it no matter how close in proximity you are to anybody who may have it in the first place.
Well, actually, if somebody gets the swine flu, actual swine flu, the chances that one of their family will develop the swine flu is only 10%.
My goodness.
Only 10%, yeah.
Because
it's difficult to transmit, and it's not a very strong virus.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's all hype. It's all hype. So what do you do? Forget about the flu. Forget about infections. Keep yourself healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. Keep yourself healthy. You will not get any disease. Doesn't that make sense?
It certainly does.
If you keep yourself healthy, you won't get any disease. So you don't have to worry about diabetes. You don't have to worry about arthritis or Alzheimer's or osteoporosis or cancer or heart disease. If you keep yourself healthy, you don't have to worry about disease. And that's why I wrote my book, Never Be Sick Again. Mm-hmm. Because when I took sick and I almost died and I had to save my own life, I had to use my own knowledge of biochemistry to save my life. After that, I discovered a whole bunch of things, and one of them is that there's really only one disease, and that's a cell that isn't working right. We're all made of these little units of life called cells. Mm-hmm. And if all the cells in your body are functioning just the way they should function, well, you can't be sick. The only way you can be sick is when a large number of cells malfunction. Well, why do they malfunction? Real easy. They malfunction because you're not giving them all of the things that they need every day to function properly, or because you're giving them something that is actually interfering with the metabolic machinery. So there's really only one disease, a malfunctioning cell. There's only two causes of disease, deficiency and toxicity, and everything else is just a symptom, Cancer is the same as diabetes, and diabetes is the same as Alzheimer's. There's no difference. Mm-hmm. What you're talking about is malfunction at the cellular level and that is manifesting in different symptoms. So always, you have to remember there's one disease, and there's only two causes of disease. So if you want to prevent disease, or if you want to cure disease, what you have to do is give the cells what they need, keep them free of things that interfere with their function, and the cells will remain in normal function or revert to normal function, and you cannot be sick. If you have a disease, the disease simply disappears. So very simple. I've had people read my book, Never Be Sick Again, with terminal cancer. They're told they're going to die. Mm-hmm. They go home, read the book, cure the cancer. 2 months later, they're cancer-free, and they're happy as a clam. Mm-hmm. Why? No such thing as cancer. All there is cells that are working the way they're supposed to work, and cells that are not working the way they're supposed to work. And when you restore those cells to their normal function, whatever is wrong goes away. So that's how simple it is. Anybody can learn how to stay healthy and how to reverse diseases, and we need to do this. This is a responsibility. I mean, it's distressing to me to see people talking about health care is a right. Health care is a right. Where does it say that in the Constitution? Mm-hmm. It's not a right. I read an ancient Buddhist text a couple of years ago, and this ancient Buddhist text goes back thousands of years, said, health is a duty. Health is a duty. Health is a responsibility. It's not a right. So it's time for people to wake up and say, hey, I'm the one that has to take care of my health, and I've got to educate myself so that I can do that. And it will change the world. I mean, it really would change the world if we start doing that. The amount of disease that we have is just unprecedented. It's bankrupting our country. Medicare is going to bankrupt the U.S. government. So we can't pay these things. We know we can't pay for them. So we're going to have to start denying care. The win-win situation where everybody wins, except the drug companies, is where people learn how to stay healthy and how to get healthy. So begin with reading my book, Never Be Sick Again. Go to my website, beyondhealth.com. And if they go to my website, by the way, there's a free weekly newsletter that they can subscribe to right on the front page of beyondhealth.com. It's a terrific newsletter. And then there's a big newsletter that I publish bi-monthly that is just one of the top newsletters in the country. And I would be happy to make an offer to your listeners free of charge. They can get a 1-year subscription to that newsletter free of charge if they buy one of my books. So buy one of my books. They cost $14.95. And I'll give you a free newsletter subscription, email newsletter, which also costs $14.95. So you spend $14.95, you get a $14.95 gift. But the gift is worth millions.
Sure.
Because in there are the secrets to getting well and staying well. And all they have to do is call this 800 number and ask for the deal. And the 800 number is 800-250-3063, 800-250-3063.
Well, very good. I know it's very impressive to know that you're right about when it comes to health. We all seem to have this attitude of entitlement that people owe us, good health care, and yet people go and they make the choices they do about how they eat, how they stay healthy. As soon as something comes along and they run to the doctor and say, you need to cure me, and if it doesn't work in that particular way that they hope it does, then there's lawsuits. It's like, we're a bunch of rats, it seems, running around in this wheel and never getting to the promised land almost.
Well, interesting. It's sometimes hard to change people, but maybe if we stop paying for their diseases. I have an old friend, for example, I went to dinner with last week. Here's a man who's already had a heart bypass operation. And those are pretty expensive. I mean, you're talking, $50,000, in some cases a lot more than that. And then last year, he had, again, the arteries clogged up, so he had to have more surgery to put a stent into an artery. So here's a guy who's really running up the bill. I went to dinner with him. He had 2 desserts. Two desserts. He had a big bowl of about 3 scoops of ice cream and another big piece of chocolate layer cake.
Right.
And he doesn't see anything wrong with that. He doesn't seem to understand that that's the cause of his problems. But you see, somebody else is paying for his problems. Right. Medicare is paying for his problems.
Right.
And so there's no economic incentive for him to do something different. So it's a very complex problem, but education is the key. We don't have to be sick. Now look at me. At age 48, I almost died. My death was a medical certainty at age 48, and at the last moment, and there was nothing left. I was in the hospital bed. I couldn't even move. I didn't have enough energy to move. Mm-hmm. At the last moment, I used my own knowledge of biochemistry to save my life. Well, now I'm going to be at age 73, my next birthday. I'll be 73, my next birthday. I have boundless energy. I never get sick. I have had one cold in the last 21 years. One cold in 21 years. And I have an excuse for that, by the way. I was coming back from making a speech in Egypt, and the planes got canceled and delayed, and I was up for over 48 hours without any sleep, and that zonked my immunity. So I got a cold. One cold in 21 years. I've had my arteries measured in March. 5 years ago, my arteries were age 30. I had them measured in March. They're now down to age 26. My goal is that by the time I'm 80 years old, that I will have the arteries of a teenager.
There you go. That's an interesting goal.
Absolutely. Anybody can do this. You see, the body is a self-repairing system. Mm-hmm. Now, you go to a car show. I mean, I went to a car show last year, and I looked at cars that were 100 years old. They looked like they just came out of the showroom. And you can go out into the parking lot outside and find a car 5 years old that looks like a piece of junk. Now, what's the difference? The difference is in the maintenance. It's how you care for the car. And your body is no different. If you care for your body well, if you give your body all of the repair materials it needs on a daily basis, it's just like repairing your home. If you give it all the repair materials it needs, and if you keep the repair machinery operating properly, you will repair on a daily basis, and you will stay biologically young, and that's where you want to be. You don't want to. Getting old is an enormous mistake. You don't want to go there. You don't want to do that because you're going to end up in a nursing home with people wheeling you around in a wheelchair while you're drooling out of your mouth. Well, you're looking at a huge repair deficit when you get to that far. That's a big repair deficit. That's a tow truck pulling you around. You're pulling your car around because it won't operate. See? If you keep yourself in good repair, you'll never get there. That'll never happen. You will stay healthy until the day you die. And vigorous, the quality of life. I mean, my quality of life is so fabulous. I mean, I never get tired. I mean, I just have boundless energy. I'm happy. What a wonderful quality of life. And I'm going on 73. I know people who are 50 who are dragging their tail.
Right, even teenagers for that matter.
Yes. Oh, increasingly.
Tell you, such an interesting topic, just starting with the swine flu and realizing that you can just go ahead and take care of all this naturally, that scientifically and statistically it's a lot of hyperinflated nonsense. It's encouraging to know that, and that we should be taking responsibility for our health anyway within our own hands. And that starts with getting good, solid, right information to move on. And Dr. Raymond Francis, I'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. Go ahead and give your website out again one more time.
It's beyondhealth.com, 2 words stuck together, beyondhealth.com. And if you want to take advantage of buying the book and getting the free 1-year subscription to the newsletter, it's 800-250-3063. And thank you so much for having me on your show, and God bless you for the good work you're doing, because you're really giving your listeners precious information, life-saving information.
Well, we certainly believe in our mission: educate, enlighten, and empower.
Absolutely. Yeah. Amen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raymond Francis, for being here on the Beyond 50 radio program. I want to thank you, the listeners out there. Be sure to sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. Just simply go online to beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50 with a 50. And also want to encourage you to visit another website from one of our wonderful sponsors that are helping support this program, and that is the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center. About 25% of Americans over the age of 60 have type 2 diabetes, a condition many believe to be irreversible. Dr. Gabriel Cousins, the founder of the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center, offers a 21-day Reversing Diabetes Naturally program that is medically supervised. Just imagine the freedom of no longer living with the disease. As an example, a 76-year-old man with type 2 diabetes went on the program. By the second day, his blood sugar dropped from 224 to the mid-80s, where it has remained. His wife also did the program, and together they switched on to a new level of joy, health, and sexual vitality in their relationship. Join the Tree of Life family that is located within a majestic valley in Arizona to experience transformative whole-person wellness. Simply call 520-394-2520. That's 520-394-2520, or simply visit www.treeoflife.nu. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.